Testing 1 2 3 1 2 3 and hello fellows, Herogon here. Now I know that this past week has probably been a bit of a break for most others around, and it's been a bit of a break for me too, seeing as Christmas was quite something. And I've actually been playing Sonic Frontiers ever since Christmas Day, so make of that what you will for whatever you guys are doing around Christmas time. So today is Thursday, December 29th, 7:15 p.m., and I am again still caught up for the most part. This week's video will just be about the fighting game framework. No Path of Yao updates for this time around. That's probably just gonna be semi-updates. This whole thing is being worked on, the fighting game framework. It's being done every week. Lots of improvements are made every few weeks or so. And a new tutorial from Sean the Bro is done every Sunday. So yeah, that being said, let's get into the meat. This week was a little bit different. It was a mostly C++ coding tutorial that involved something called macros. Now, I don't know too much about macros in Unreal Engine myself, but according to Sean the Bro in his little description on customizable macros, he goes over implementing macros to allow one input to be treated as multiple, customizing and configuring macros, and fixing issues with the multi-input commands. Definitely a little bit of stuff here and there. Now, going into the code, we have ourselves base game instance, the character.h and CPP, and base player controller. In base game instance, we just have a few things around. Now, in particular, we have put the e-input type enum from the character files right into base game instance, and not much else there, but there is also the P1 macros, in this case the P1 macro input, which is the inputs bound to macro 1 for player 1. There's still a lot of work to go for this part, but no doubt that Sean the Bro is working hard on this part. Now, going into the base game instance.cpp, we just have p1 macro inputs.setNum, which sets how many macro inputs we have in there. We've got light punch and heavy punch here. I'm still going through things myself for this, so please exercise a bit of patience if you're a little hyped on getting something big out of me. Moving on, we have base player controller. The one thing I added is the call press and call release, because our base player controller is where we have all of our controller support. And going into the .cpp, we have this bind action stuff here, i.e. pressed and i.e. released parts, and these call the function of press macro and release macro 1. Going down a bit, if possessed pawn, then our possessed pawn will do press macro 1 and release macro 1. This is done in the Project Fight Stars character. Going further down, we have the 2 events again, as well as, let's see, looks like that's about it for that small code logic and the .h. But moving on, we go into the character.cpp, and the changes made are in check input buffer for command using type and is input and multi-input command, which are improvements a little bit outside of the macros part. Helps a little bit. We've got if charged frames is greater than 0, then charged frames will equal charged frames minus 1. And then in is input in multi-input command, we have ourselves the if statement no longer having another if statement in there. Going back to Sean's video, I will show which part was taken out of that little function. Going a little bit ahead, and let's see, around here we'll be able to see the particular part that I changed, and still going, and there we go. If exclamation point underscore command dot input types I dot is currently held, we no longer use that if statement in there. It's just simply the old command, the underscore command dot input types I dot is currently held being set to true and returning that value. And then going into the press and release macro functions, we will have ourselves this logic. We perform our input logic from the game instance. For if auto game instance, we cast it to our base game instance. Then for each loop, if integers I equals 0, for integer I equals 0, I is less than the game instance p1 macro inputs dot num and plus plus I. Then we perform the input logic, our game instance p1 macro inputs I, and the input status is press. The same goes for release macro 1, except it's for release being the input status. And finally, in press macro 1, we've got add input icon to screen, but that is currently commented out. It will be done in a few videos or so do be patient on behalf of Sean the Bro's part. And there you have it. That is a bit of the improvements I've been doing to the fighting game, my own little copy of the fighting game framework that Sean the Bro's been doing. He's so far still kicking for quite a while. He's been doing this since 2019. I look forward to the new year bringing a lot more to the table for Sean. Credit again goes to him for all of his Unreal Engine tutorials. Here he's got more than just fighting games. He's got Smash Bros, Castlevania-inspired side-scrollers, third-person game tutorials, which is now the action RPG, and even a first-person shooter. So, yeah, it's definitely a lot that he's done. That being said, I've been Herogon, you've been you. Thank you for all coming, and I look forward to meeting you by New Year's. Goodbye, everyone.